and other socio political reasons, our kids are really struggling and they need our help. So tonight's presentation is really about what can we do as parents to make things a little bit easier on our kids from itty bitties through high school. Okay. So things that we can do kind of in broad scope to help our kids is help them to learn how to identify what their stressors are, how to build emotional awareness, how to create better relationships with our children, so that they know they can not only come to us, but also that by coming to us, it'll give them the sense of support that they need. We can help them by using positive parenting practices, by teaching them things like mindset, by listening is a big one. Having a sense of humor is absolutely critical if you are going to have children. And then modeling regulation. So it's hard to ask your child to calm themselves down when they see you as a parent losing your cool and not being able to calm down. So we want to really build our own regulation skills so that we can help our kids do the same. So these are all things that we're going to be talking about this evening. All right, so today's objectives. We're going to talk about the stressors that are affecting today's youth. So not just like the typical stressors that affect all children always, but really kind of some of those things that have been brought on by technology, by the pandemic, just kind of modern stressors that maybe we didn't think so much about when we were children. We're going to talk about developing positive relationships with our children that can help them build resilience and reduce their stress. We'll learn the basics of positive parenting and the basics of developing a growth mindset. It's a lot of material to cover, so we'll get to it. All right. So what are our objectives for our kids, right? We know what our objectives for this evening are. But as far as our kids, like, what are we doing? What is it that we want? For me as a parent, I want my children to be healthy, happy, safe, autonomous, and to be what we call a GAA or a grown-ass adult. I want my kids to be able to fly from home and be autonomous and functioning, right? I would also, as a parent, like to be a really good grandparent someday. So these are lessons we can all benefit from. All right. So why are kids so stressed out these days? This slide is impossible to read, but this really talks about the stressors that have been around kind of for kids forever. So that's not what we're going to be focusing on this evening. Here are some of the stressors that I think are important to talk about. So we have pushed our children to develop faster these days. Even though the National Education Association has recommended no homework for little kids, kindergartners, preschoolers, these days they're getting an average of 25 minutes of homework per day. These are 5-year-olds. They should not be getting homework at all, and yet that's what we're doing to them. We have found that early literacy instruction has increased by 25% just since 1998. So we're expecting our kids to be able to learn more and learn faster than we did 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So, and it's, when we talk about the developing brain, there's only so much that is able to develop at a time, right? There's a fixed capacity as our children are growing, and we're really pushing the limits on that right now. We know that in school, classes like art, music, and physical education have dramatically dropped. Many schools don't have PE daily. Right now in our country, 2nd and 3rd grade children have 3 times the amount of recommended homework. And this is by the National Education Association. We put a lot of pressure on our kids to perform academically. We put a lot of emphasis on high stakes testing. This leads to problems like sleeping issues, test anxiety, tearfulness, and reluctance to go to school. I want my children to love school. I want them to think of school as their second home as they're growing up. I don't want them to not want to go because it's so stressful. We also have a tendency, especially in areas like this, to overschedule our kids. The activities that we put our children into, the whole idea of them is for fun, for relaxation, for them to feel like a kid. These are recreation, right? And yet a lot of times we have our kids bouncing from one activity to another, and they're exhausted. And maybe they complain about not wanting to go. And we kind of get caught between this place of teaching our kids that, well, once you start something, right, you want to finish it. This is a good value. It's a good lesson in life. But sometimes we have to think about how much are we expecting them to do? And is it a fun activity? Is it something that's bringing them joy? Is it something that is decreasing their stress? If it's not, maybe we need to think about the lessons that we're all learning. And every kid is different. Some kids really thrive on having lots of activities. They don't like the downtime. It's uncomfortable for them. And some kids need more downtime. Maybe 1 half-hour to 60-minute activity per week is enough for them. Maybe they love that thing, and the rest of the time they really need open, unstructured time to be creative or to just process the things that have been happening through the week. In addition to overscheduling them and having these, what should be stress relieving activities, be more stressful, we also have fewer outlets for stress reduction. 7 to 8% of young grade schoolers, that's less than third grade, have never had recess. Not don't have recess every day, but have never had recess. Since 2008, 20% of school system have decreased recess by almost an hour a week. Our kids need recess. They need to get out. They need to just shut their minds down for a second and enjoy themselves, to have time away from academics, to have the socialization that comes from recess. Our kids need this, and we're taking it away. Most children in our country have PE less than 2 times per week. Not okay. Another newer stressor is the frequency of chronic illnesses in children. So research has shown that between 1994 and 2006, chronic illnesses have more than doubled in children. The highest prevalence of chronic illnesses in kids would be asthma, obesity, and behavioral and learning problems. Almost 6.5 million children have been diagnosed with ADHD. That is 2 million more than just 10 years ago. Many chronic illnesses that were once considered fatal, we now have the ability to manage with medication and with different medical treatments. But these, the children who have these illnesses, they have the other side of it is they miss a lot of school. They're unable to do activities. There's side effects from the treatments, and they can't do all the things that their peers can do. So even though these children have lives, right? We've been able to keep them alive. Their lives are different, and it is more stressful than their peers who don't suffer from the same chronic illnesses. Media saturation and access to adult content. So this is a huge problem. We have a 24-hour news cycle, right? There is no time ever that a child can't press a button and be exposed to anything. We're constantly connected. Children, even if you're just watching the news, right, there's really horrifying stuff going on in the real world. and younger kids are being exposed to this. There's more violence and adult sexuality in regular television and regular entertainment than there used to be. There's also a habit of using media to kind of pacify our kids while we get something done, while we work from home in the pandemic, while we try to get dinner on the table, right? Here, just watch a show, right? When we are not there with the children and they're exposed to something that might be questionable, whether it's in the news or something that's very inappropriate for children to be watching, we are not there to answer questions or to turn it off right away or to say, oh, that's not something we should be watching right now, let's do something else. And we really need to be aware of all of the content that our kids are viewing. We can not only filter incoming media, but also if we're around, we can put it into context for them, which can be really important. Bullying and teasing. I had a parent recently say, well, the one good thing about the pandemic is there's less bullying going on. Thinking about bullying as a recess thing, a lunch table thing, right? Where the kids are being mean to each other in vivo. Unfortunately, with our 24-hour news cycle and with kids having phones and iPads and Chromebooks and little watches that they can text with, right? There is bullying going on. There is cyberbullying, and it happens all the time. Your child once could leave recess, leave school for the day and go home and feel safe. That doesn't happen anymore. The bullying is nonstop. It's relentless. It's at night. It's in the morning. It's at school. It's constant. Another thing that people don't think about with like social media is the kids who are missing out on social activities. Maybe they didn't get invited to the birthday party and they pull up their Instagram and there's their friends at the birthday party. And so it's like literally in their face that they were not asked to be a part of something. And that's really hard too. A final note on social media is the longevity, right? If somebody is bullied, made fun of, whatever on social media, that never really goes away. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be able to be found, no matter how the adults may say, oh no, we've removed that, it's okay. It's always going to be out there. A huge stressor for children and teens these days is sleep deprivation. 1/3 of parents say that their kids' schoolwork and activities interfere with their sleep. 75% of children ages 6 to 17 not only have electronic devices, but they're in their bedrooms. Another stressor is family disruption, parental illnesses, frequent and prolonged deployments. There's over 2 million kids right now who have had a parent deploy to Iraq or Afghanistan. Divorce is another family disruption. 1.5 million kids experience their parents' divorce. And then parental stress. We want to be able to spend quality time with our kids. That's unstructured time. We're not driving somewhere. We're not doing something. We're not multitasking. But we're just hanging out, having unstructured time. And that is not only good for our kids, but that's good for us too. It decreases our stress and our children's stress, and it increases our energy. And I don't know a parent right now that couldn't use a little more energy. Okay. So before we get into positive parenting, I want to make a quick note. Positive parenting is a theory out there, and it is not my theory, but I talk about it. When we use the word parent, I am talking about any individual whose presence benefits the health and well-being of a child. So this could be biological parents, adoptive parents, foster parents, grandparents. It could be anybody in the life of a child who is helping them thrive. So the objectives of positive parenting are to be able to discipline and teach discipline in a way that builds your child's self-esteem, that supports the relationship between the child and the parents without breaking the child's spirit. We want to be warm, thoughtful, and loving, but not permissive. We'll talk about in a little bit more detail what that means. We want to think about parenting as being an emotion coach. That's going to build confidence in our children. It's going to promote intellectual and psychosocial growth. So according to positive parenting, there are 5 steps in emotion coaching. First is building awareness, right? Our kids all go through periods of time where they act out and they don't know why. And oftentimes it's because they have a feeling, right? And they're acting on their feelings, but they don't know what it is, right? So we help our kids. Okay, my face is squished and my hands are clenched and my tummy hurts. Maybe I'm feeling angry, right? So building the awareness. The second step is connecting with your child. We'll definitely be talking a little bit more about this. And listening to our children, kind of foundational. We need to be able to do that. Naming those emotions. So once you have and your child has built awareness of the different emotions that we go through, being able to name them and articulate that and talk about them is really important. And then finally, we want to find solutions to whatever's going on when you're feeling this anger, right? What do we do about it? What are some things that we can try to make you feel better? And oftentimes finding a solution is going to be attached to regulation. So can I calm my body down? Can I calm my thoughts down? Can I get to a place where I can talk about my icky feelings instead of stomping or throwing or, pulling my sister's hair or whatever? By teaching and leading our children in these lessons, it promotes confidence and it provides tools for decision making. I love being able to say to my own children and the kids I work with, hey, you're a really good problem solver. What do you think you should do about that? Right? You're building their confidence. You're teaching them how to make decisions when things come up. Positive communication between a child and a parent promotes good social skills, problem-solving skills, and it enhances the ability to form good interpersonal relationships. And at the end of the day, when we put our kids out into the world, we need them. We want them to be able to build good, strong, healthy relationships. The sense of this warm, thoughtful parenting or democratic parenting, it really helps to build our kids' self-esteem. And that is something that most of our kids could really use a healthy dose of these days. The idea of being a supervisor to your child's play promotes pro-social peer bonding and positive outcomes. By promoting autonomy, we're supporting things like creativity, self-determination, empowerment. Supportive and optimistic parenting also fosters a child's belief in themselves, right? Belief in their future, the idea that they are empowered and competent. The idea of competency for children is absolutely huge, and we don't talk about that enough. They need to know that they can do stuff. They can handle stuff. They can solve their problems. They can come up with a creative idea to deal with a friend or whatever's going on. They need to feel competent. Recognition for desirable behavior builds self-efficacy. And again, it really helps those pro-social behaviors. By applying and upholding boundaries and consequences, that teaches accountability and responsibility. So if you just look at this slide and look at the bolded words, these are all things that we want for our children, right? And by following a couple basic principles in positive parenting, we're building all of these wonderful qualities that we want to be able to foster in our kids. Okay, so great, we got a lot of words, but what does it look like, right? Positive parenting is authoritative and it's developmental. So when we talk about authoritative parenting, we're talking about being assertive, but not intrusive, demanding, but responsive, right? Yes, you need to do the things that I tell you need to do. I will listen to you explain why it's going to be hard or why you don't want to do it, but the expectation is that you will. We want to be supportive, but we don't want to be punitive. Okay, so that's what authoritative parenting looks like. We also want to think through a developmental lens, right? These are children. We need to be affectionate, responsive, encouraging, and teaching. We are teaching our children how to become adults. We are teaching them how to become better people. We're teaching them how to be people. All right. So this idea of autonomy, how do we build autonomy in our kids? One of the big things that we want to do is support exploration and involvement in decision making. I talked about this briefly, being able to say to your kid, hey, you're a really good problem solver, right? What are some things that we could do? How can we look at this problem and look at it from different perspectives? How can we maybe solve this problem, right? And working through that together and teaching and leading those kind of skills, very important. We need to pay attention to and respond to our child's needs. If we don't, they don't learn how to take care of themselves. We need to attend to our child's emotional expression and control. This is the idea of building that awareness of emotions, of building regulation skills. We want to reward and encourage positive behaviors. And this is a little bit tricky. I talk about this in my parenting groups all the time. When we see a child do something we don't want them to do, our gut reaction is we punish that, right? Don't do that. This is what's going to happen, right? This is the consequence. You're going to, I don't know, get a spanking or whatever. What we want to do to increase positive behaviors is to reward positive. It's easier to increase a behavior than it is to decrease a behavior. So we want to reward the positive behaviors as opposed to punishing the negative. If you say to your child, I really like how you sat down with your little brother and read a book, that was awesome. Good job, buddy. You know, and here, you know, here's a hug, or you just earned a point in our point system or a token or whatever. By reinforcing that behavior, that child is going to do it again. It feels good when they're reinforced, so they will increase that behavior. We need to be able to provide clear rules and expectations. This is where it gets tricky, right? Nobody wrote the ultimate parenting guide where we know what rules to set at what ages, right? So we need to come up with those. We need to be very explicit and say, these are the rules, these are the expectations. If these expectations do not happen, right, this is going to be the consequence, and that consequence is going to happen every time. And a consequence is not necessarily a punishment. We need to provide adequate supervision and monitoring, right? We need to know what the kids are getting into, especially when it comes to screens. We want to act as a positive role model. We need to model the values and behaviors that we want to see in our kids. If we sit down to the dinner table and I have my phone out, you better believe my kids are seeing that and they're going to think that is okay. That's part of what we do at dinner time. So if you don't do that and you don't allow phones at the dinner table, you're building relationships, right? You're teaching all these good lessons, and you're modeling things that are important for your family. And you won't always want to make positive family experiences a priority, right? We have so much to do and we're all overtaxed, we're all too busy, but we really need to prioritize that fun, positive family time. So, discipline. Yikes. I really liked this quote. Respecting children teaches them that even the smallest, most powerless, most vulnerable person deserves respect. And that is a lesson our world desperately needs to learn. So yeah, we need to respect our kids. How do we teach them to respect us, to respect their elders, to respect their peers, to respect themselves? We show them how by respecting them. We need to be kind but firm when we are disciplining our children. We want to promote their sense of belonging and significance. They need to know that they are important. They are a part of the family. They are an amazing little human being, right? When we talk about discipline, we really want to think about long term. It's really easy to like when we talk about punishment, you're dealing in the short term, right? If I smack a kid's hand or I yell no at them, it's going to stop the behavior immediately. It is not going to prevent it from happening again, right? All they're going to do is not do that thing when I'm in the room. It's not going to teach them that that is not something that they should be doing, right? So you want to think in long term, not just immediacy. We want to teach valuable social and life skills, things like self-soothing. How can I calm myself down when I'm feeling agitated? Social skills, so I can go out into the world and develop healthy relationships. Problem solving, problems happen all the time. We need to be able to figure things out. We need to help our kids develop the sense that they are capable, that they are competent. All right, so what does this look like? So the theory of positive parenting has several principles that we're going to talk about. The respect principle. Basically, this is treating your child the same way that you want to be treated. This is how we teach them respect. There is a big deal principle. We use positive reinforcement in meaningful ways for desired behaviors, right? So this is, again, like you see your child doing something good, we want to praise that. That way they will do it again and again. There's an incompatible alternative principle, and this is making sure your kid has something to do that makes it impossible for them to do the undesirable behavior, right? So if they are, if they're being mean, they're using mean words towards their siblings, have them sing a song. You can't say mean words if you're singing the lyrics to a song, right? You're substituting something for something else. So if you don't want them watching so much television, pull out a board game, play a board game. You can't do two things at the same time. The choice principle. So this is, we do this with little kids all the time. It's providing choices. It's a fixed choice perspective, but it gives your child the idea that they have some onus. They have some sort of power over choices, right? Do you want to take your bath before or after you brush your teeth? They still have to brush their teeth. They still have to take their bath, but they can choose the order in which they do it. The when, then, abuse it or lose it principle. This makes sure that rewards are lost when rules are broken. So the example in here is after you clean your room, you can play outside. That means that if they don't clean their room, they don't play outside, period. And then there's the connect before you correct principle. And this is so important. We need to make sure our kids feel loved and cared for and safe before we tell them what they're doing wrong. right? I love you so much, but I really need you to, to think about the way that you're talking to me. Validation principle, this is validating your kids' feelings. I know you're sad about losing your sleepover. I get it. I understand that. It's a really icky feeling. There's the good head on your shoulders principle, which is making sure that your child feels, again, we're talking about this sense of competency, or they're capable, they can do stuff, right? We want to make sure that they know that they are empowered and they are responsible for their own choices. The belonging and significance principle, our kids need to feel important. They need to feel like they belong. Saying something about how they're really good at helping in the kitchen, and we need that. We need your help so that we can all sit down and have dinner together, right? Or at the other side of dinner, it's so important that you are helping to clean up so that we can go and have our family time, so we can sit down and read together, right? They need to know those things. Oops. Okay. Last one is the timer says it's time principle. Timers are like magic in parenting. They take a lot of the responsibility and a lot of the yelling out of situations. So set a timer to help kids make transitions, right? They know it's going to be expected of them. It might give them a choice. How much time do you need? I have done this with my own kids. How much time do you think it's going to take a shower? Okay, well, let's time it and see, right? And that time then becomes all right, you've got 20 minutes to do this. You've got 10 minutes to do this. And with younger kids, especially, they like to set the timer, right? Again, that gives them the sense of empowerment. And then it's the timer's fault, not yours, when it goes off and they have to stop doing what they were doing. Okay, so that was positive parenting. We're going to switch gears and talk about a growth mindset. Okay. So growth mindset is a way of looking at challenges or of setbacks. It's the idea that even when you're struggling with something, even when there is a problem, our skills to deal with it are not fixed, right? There's potential for growth always. There's always room for improvement, right? We don't let setbacks derail us. We view them as a pathway towards progress. This teaches us and our kids to be advocates for ourselves. And this is a crucial life lesson. We want our kids to be able to speak up and ask for support. This leads to their improvement in whatever the situation was, and others. There is a really cool website. It's understood.org. It's got amazing information on things like ADHD and learning disabilities and different types of neurodiversity. I love this website for parents. And I found these great growth mindset activities. Because we're virtual, I'm just going to give you the address here to go on, but they really do a great job of helping you kind of develop these skills for yourself and for your kids. So go to understood.org. And again, we can share these slides with anybody who's interested. Okay, so talk a little bit about humor in parenting. I talk with my own kids all the time about growth mindset, right? There's a problem that comes up and I think, okay, think through the growth mindset lens. How do you think we should, approach this? And my daughter, who's in this picture here, is learning to drive. Talk about having a growth mindset as a parent. We were backing down our driveway, very long driveway. And I jokingly said, hey, you didn't hit a tree. First time she backed up. And she goes, I didn't hit a tree yet, Mom. Growth mindset. So at least I know she's listening, right? She does this to me all the time now because it's hilarious. So the idea of the growth mindset is really that there's always opportunities to learn more. There's always opportunities to take a situation and tweak it so that it becomes an opportunity for growth. I believe that is it for slides. There are some more resources that I have on the presentation here, but I was hoping that people would ask some questions. If there's any topics that you want to cover, anything that you want me to go back to, you can type in.
They can type it into the chat there. If you have questions, if you type them into the chat, I'll be able to tell you what's there. I haven't seen any just yet. So we'll check.
Was there anything that I was talking about that, oh, here we got one. Specific to preschoolers, what are some tactics to use to promote positive behaviors and get rid of negative behaviors? Yeah. So promoting positive behaviors, again, you really want to think about when you catch them being good, that's when you jump in with all the hugs and the reinforcement and the, oh man, you're doing so good, because they're going to repeat that behavior. Can you, Emily, can you give me an idea of like a negative behavior that you're working on with your preschooler?
Do you see that? Yeah.
Obnoxious noises. Okay. That's a good one because they do make a lot of obnoxious noises, don't they? So the principle of giving them something else to do instead of the negative behavior would really be a good principle for obnoxious noises. Kids make obnoxious noises for a couple reasons. One, it gives them attention, right? Because as soon as we hear the noise, we turn to them and are like, you know, not necessarily yelling at them, but we're commenting on it, right? We're like, ew, what was that obnoxious noise you made? Don't do that, right? We're giving them attention. So the first thing we want to do is ignore it when it happens. And it goes against our grain as parents to have them do something that we don't like and not say something. But if they're not getting attention from it, then they are not likely to do the noise again, if the purpose of the behavior was attention. If the purpose of the behavior is they're playing with their mouths and the musculature to see what sort of sounds that they can make, like kids will do, like, can you do this or whatever, then ask them to do it in their room with their siblings or on the playground with their friends, right? To back up for a second, every behavior has a purpose, right? So determining the purpose of the behavior really tells us what tactics we're going to be using, right? So if it's attention, we ignore. If it's they're learning something and they're trying to figure things out and it's driving us crazy, then maybe we need to throw headphones on or have them do it in a different room. Let's see, we have being nice to other kids and dogs, getting kiddo to do things like getting dressed in a timely fashion or listening. So these are things that, like, all parents are working on. So I'm glad that you specified these. So when we see our children, our child behaving in a not very nice way, we want to, not in the moment when the other children are around, but later that day when it's just you and your child, you want to be able to sit and talk to them and explain to them that not only like the way the words, but the way that they were talking can be hurtful, because chances are your child is not trying to be hurtful, right? They're trying to get a message across, or they're trying to do something else. So helping them to come up with other ways, right? You're teaching that problem solving, so they can generate different ways of dealing with their friends or dogs or siblings or whatever to be nicer. And also explaining like how that feels. So, giving them a situation like, if so and so said to you, blah, 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 how would that make you feel? Would that make you feel like they were your friend? Would that make you feel icky inside? Right? Like helping them to understand the impact of their words or their tone. As far as getting dressed in a timely fashion, this is where timers are awesome. Ahead of time, figure out how long things should take, right? Or typically take, and build it into your schedule. Some kids just take longer to do stuff, right? And if we're constantly rushing those kids, they're not going to get faster. They're going to get more stressed. So we need to build the time in for them. Those times will change, right? This is kids, they're developing. Things are always on a trajectory where they'll be changing. But where they are at this point, if they're getting distracted and you remove the distractions and they're internally distracted and it's really taking a long time, make sure you build that time in for them. You can also reward them. Hey, if you can get dressed and come down here in 10 minutes and 20 minutes, whatever that time is, then you're going to get a treat in your lunch today. Or you can have 5 extra minutes of screen time after school or whatever. Morning routines are tricky. This is one of the things I work with parents on the most, more so than bedtime routines. Make sure that we aren't accidentally adding distractions to their mornings. A lot of adults want a radio on, they want the news on, the television's on, something to, to get the news or just to have background noise or whatever. Although that might be helpful for you in your morning, your child might be really distracted by that. So be mindful of what's going on in the environment when they're trying to get ready. When your child has just woken up, I don't know about you other parents, but when I first wake up, I am not at like full cognitive capacity. That's why my kids ask me for stuff when I'm still sleepy, because I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever, I don't know what I'm saying. And our kids don't either. So they're not at full cognitive capacity. And if we're asking them to do this and then this and then this and then this and then this, and they've got 25 minutes and then you're out the door, that's too much, right? So we want to make it easier for them and for us. We want to get as much ready the night before as we can, right? Water bottles are filled and in the fridge. Lunch is made and in the fridge. Backpacks already packed. Charging station, iPads, Chromebooks, phones, all that stuff, watches, all on one place overnight. They're not in their bedrooms, they're getting fully charged, and there's only one place to look for all the rest of the stuff that goes in the backpack in the morning. We just had another question pop up. How do you create continuity between how kiddo behaves yep, with grandma and aunties, but the positive behaviors don't carry over at our own house, but the kiddo knows these are things that they would never do at grandma's, right? Yeah, kids are smart, aren't they? Have a conversation with your kid. Why is it okay to do it here? and it's not okay to do it at grandma's. What's different, right? A lot of times our kids naturally will act our kids naturally act differently in different situations, right? There are children who are little angels at school. They come home and the horns pop out, right? Oftentimes it's a matter of structure, of pre-imposed rules, of expectations and consequences that are clear. At school, the children know from the time they get in till the time they leave exactly what's to be expected, right? They're aware ahead of time of all transitions. They know what stuff they need at what point in the day. They know who's going to be sitting next to them. They know the order that they have to stand in line to go to lunch, right? All of that is set up and structured. Our homes are typically very different, right? Yeah, maybe we eat dinner at like 6-ish, or so if it's my house, somewhere between 5 and 9. But there's often less structure at home, and sometimes our kids need that. Sometimes it's just a matter of outlining what the rules are. And sometimes our kids do things with us that they would never do with other people because we make them feel safe. So there's the double-edged sword, Mom, right? Our kids should know that no matter what they do, no matter what limits they push, no matter what buttons they press, that they're always going to be safe and loved at home, right? And so that's where we get these behaviors that, well, I would never do that at grandma's house, right? But here, maybe the consequences are different, maybe not, but I'm safe, right? We want our kids to feel that way, but we also want to teach them that we still don't do X, Y, and Z at home. So I would say be very explicit with your child, have a conversation, and acknowledge that I appreciate that you don't do this thing at grandma's, right? I appreciate that you don't do it with your aunties because you know that it's naughty, or you know that it's disrespectful, or whatever language you use with your kids, right? And I'd really like you to not do it at home either, because it makes me feel that same way that you don't want grandma to feel, right? And so just kind of like explicitly telling them what is to be expected and why it's important to you. So hopefully that will help. Part of one of these questions was also like listening when something needs to be done. Transitions for kids are oftentimes really difficult, right? Especially when they're going from an activity that they enjoy to a chore, or to, some sort of, daily living skill, right? If I have to go from reading my fun book, or playing a video game, or talking on the phone, and now I have to go help with dinner, take a shower, do my homework, whatever, that transition is going to be really, really hard, right? Transitions are also hard the other way. Even though they're going from something they don't want to do or don't particularly enjoy doing to something that they do, there's still a lot involved in transitions that we don't think about. So from an executive function perspective, you have to stop doing something, right? I have to tell my brain that we're going to stop the activity that we're currently engaged in, right? Then I have to transfer my focus from one thing to another, right? That's a second process in the brain. And then third, I have to initiate this new thing, right? So there's 3 kind of micro processes going on anytime you transition from one thing to another. During that time, there's distractions, right? How many of us have a kid where we're like, go to your room and grab your backpack, right? And they run to the room and then they disappear, right? They went into the room, they saw a ball. They started bouncing the ball. The ball rolled under the bed. They looked under the bed. They saw a Matchbox car, right? They started playing with the car. It's like if you give a mouse a cookie, right? One thing leads to another, to another, to another. Getting the backpack got lost like 3 things ago. And you're down there like, where's your backpack? What happened? Where are you? You know, and they're just like, what? I'm playing. They totally forgot about the backpack thing, right? All these things can be distracting, and they're in the process of going from one thing to another, and stuff gets lost, right? And so oftentimes it takes them forever to initiate the new task, which would be, you know, getting the backpack or starting their homework or whatever. Timers, again, when it comes to transitional times or transitional periods, using a timer can be super helpful for that. It takes the responsibility off us and lets them know that it lets them know when they hear the chime, right? That's their that's the stimulus that they hear it. Now they know they have to go and do this. It also keeps us from yelling at them. The last part of that is we want to give them time to make their transition. You're not just going from A to B immediately, right? But you need time for those 3 microprocesses. So you might say, okay, you're playing your video game in 5 minutes. When the timer goes off, I want you to do this thing, but you're giving them a warning before the transition period starts. That's really important. Okay, so we have, what about safety when outside, staying closer when walking, holding hands without a fight every time to cross street parking lot. Okay, so you have a runner. Yeah, when it comes to safety, that is, you know, that is when the rules have to get a little tighter, right? We can't give them room, figuratively or literally, we can't give them room to kind of figure it out, right? If you're in a street, if you're in a parking lot. If you can find something that your child is like really into, say superheroes, then when you're in a parking lot, you can have the, okay, this is your Iron Man hand, and you have to keep it touching the car the entire time until Iron Man goes in mommy's hand, right? Or, you know, if you have an object, a transitional object that your child carries around with them, a car, a blankie, whatever, a whoopee, you hold one end, they hold the other, you know. But finding something that has importance to them and using that as your kind of safety holder. I'm losing words, it's late. But using something that's important to them to keep the safety rules in place, you know, that's a good way to do it, because then again, it's teaching them that they have some power, they have some ability to keep themselves safe while they're holding onto, you know, the blankie that you're holding onto, or, you know, the Iron Man hand or whatever. Yeah, kids are scary, aren't they? They run off like that. You know, having the safety conversations over and over again does help, especially when you're doing it before, you know, before you leave the house, right? You're setting up the expectations. Now, don't forget, when we're out, these are the rules. You're always holding my hand, or holding, you know, your teddy bear, and I'm holding the other teddy bear hand. You go through what the rules are, so they remember these are the expectations, right? There can be a consequence. If you don't, then you're going to have to go in a stroller, and you're too old for a stroller, or I'm not going to be able to take you to the park afterwards, or, you know, whatever. But build up those expectations and consequences ahead of time, so that it stays in their stays in their minds, right? They're little, they need to hear the stuff over and over, even though we get pretty sick of saying the same things over and over. Are there any other questions or anything that I can speak to in the last couple minutes? All right. Well, I would like to thank all of you for listening to me go on and on. And thank you to the Glen Ellyn Public Library for having me speak again. I love that. And I appreciate it. Kate, is there anything else?
No, I think we're good. Yeah, thank you for joining us, Dr. Larson. It was excellent, super helpful. And thank you everyone else for joining us this evening. I think we're good. Have a good evening.
Well, happy spring break, everyone.
Yes, thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.